coming online. Now, Starkware made some interesting design choices which were future-proof from a prescient viewpoint. I think they used some hash-based crypto, so they're post-quantum. But they're not quite as efficient as the classical stuff that's there. But it's a fast-growing field, and we're pragmatic as anybody else, and that actually is a great venture for somebody wanting to do something on Cardano. Catalyst funds will be made available, and I suspect there's probably going to be a roll-up round that occurs, or a ZK round that occurs, and we'll see a whole wave of ZK companies come in. I think we're actually one of the best positioned of the ventures in the crypto space to pursue this because we have the closest connection to academia and to contractors that implement cryptographic algorithms. For example, Galois is the entity that's implementing Mithril at the moment, and they're incredible at cryptographic engineering. They're a very, very smart company. It would not be hard to extend that contract to say, hey, let's go do some roll-up stuff and so forth. So 5 to 10 for the really good stuff, but you're absolutely right. There are intermediate solutions that exist, and they'll percolate their way in. How is privacy on Cardano? So one area I really think would be cool to improve is introducing proxy keys. So it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and we're having discussions on the best way to do it, but a separation of the cold and hot infrastructure. So the basic idea is you can have 3 key chains: spending key, voting key, and staking key. There's a kind of a primary, secondary. So the primary would be the spending, and the secondary would be the staking and delegation. The staking and voting keys, excuse me, and you could either directly delegate with them, or what you can do is you can create a new key chain that's just a staking key and a voting key, and we can call those proxy keys. And the idea is that you would sign a transaction that would enable those keys to act on behalf of the original key chain. Now, the advantage here is that the proxy keys could live on the hot wallet, so Daedalus, Yoroi, and so forth. And then your main keychain could be on your cold infrastructure, a paper wallet, hardware wallet. That's kind of the naive way of doing things. But that connection between the proxy keys and the main keychain, you may be able to use a snark in that connection. And if that's the case, then what would happen is that privacy only goes in one direction. I should say transparency only goes in one direction. So the proxy keys to the main keychain, you wouldn't be able to connect them. So that's a private system, private delegation, private voting. But then on the main chain, you can see in the other direction transparent. So you can identify the proxy keys. So your wallet would show you your preferences, but the other way it's confidential. So I think that's probably the best way of introducing something. And then actually that primitive could be reused for transactional privacy as well. But there are more regulatory questions that we'd have to think carefully about. And probably metadata would be enough to get it there with encrypted DIDs or something like that. But yeah, that's definitely something we're looking into. It'll have to come a little later down the roadmap, so second half of 2022 likely, because there's so much to do in the first 2 major releases. But it's definitely something that we're looking for a protocol for that makes sense. The other problem with these things is that they tend to introduce a lot of bloat to the system, and that's not where you'd want to be. So we have to be very careful. And true to form, this is actually the question I was addressing earlier. What can the average person who doesn't understand programming do to help Cardano succeed? That's why that class needs to exist. Okay. And this is the wrong thinking. Hydra release date. You see, everybody's just looking for this, like, this date, boom, it's done, it's over. It gets released iteratively. You have the head, and then you need routing and head and tail and this and that and this, and you gradually iterate and you run it first on the test net. Transactions are going through it. Stuff is happening. And then after you've done that, people start building dApps connected to it, and then you just gradually see it roll out. That's how you do these things. But this guy, he wants this day. It's not how it works. It's not how it works for any of this. Yeah, this is another example. Clown, where is the Dex, Charles? Talk to Sunday, talk to Mel, talk to all these guys. There's like 12 of them that are currently building. We're 4 months into smart contracts. Let's count that. September and October, November. Did I count that wrong? Did I count it wrong? Exactly. Did I? I don't know how to count. But all you do is sign useless MOUs. So building relationships with heads of state, nation states that control tens of millions of people and can bring in billions of transactions a month to our system is a bad deal. Oh, okay, I guess that's not my job. And do AMA, so communicating with my community is a bad deal. Oh, okay. And cherry pick questions. Well, I took your question, clown again, and other devs do 100-hour work weeks. So you want the CEO of the company to do 100-hour work weeks doing what exactly? Programming? We are number one for GitHub commits usually on for development. So tons of code is being written on a daily basis. But maybe we should write more code, okay? Hey, we could be part of the $10.5 billion club of money that was lost or stolen. How about we do that? Or let's just abandon all of our principles, right? So we just release shit, hope it works. Who knows? Okay. Or we just do a Tron. Let's just fork stuff, take other people's stuff, right? So we could be fast to market, right? More clowns. Yeah. It's the mindset, Okay. Charles Jordan Peterson has been having conversations on his podcast regarding the philosophical nature of crypto. Important for you to discuss the philosophy of crypto with him. He'd love your vision. I think so. It'd be a lot of fun. And next year we'll try to get on Jordan's podcast. And that's one you got to prepare for. I got to reread Maps of Meaning and, like eat my Wheaties. That Joe Rogan, the Jordan Rogan sandwich is going to be a lot of fun. What happened to the third hard fork that was going to be this year? So we actually had one. It was in October. We had Mary in May. We did the September hard fork, and then we have a very small hard fork in October. So there were 3. But what happened is we took some of the things that were slated for November, and we decided to roll them into the February so that we could a larger release and do time-based releases. It was just too much on the exchanges and other people to do back-to-back-to-back hard forks, and also people need a little bit of time off between them. So the third hard fork happened, but it was smaller than expected, and that means the February hard fork will be larger than anticipated to roll up all the stuff that was slated for November. What's your favorite Pink Floyd song? Wish You Were Here. Hey, Charles, thoughts on Raul Paul? He seems to fail to list Cardano as a credible crypto. I think he actually owns ADA, and I don't think he's ever said we're not credible, and I've met him, and I've been on Real Vision and so forth. It's just there's so many of these projects out there, and, you know, it's... dogs are going crazy. Are we living in a simulation? Yeah, you know, I think we might be. Yeah, I used to say no, but now I'm more on the other side. Mm-hmm. Okay, lots of dog barking. Where did the name Cardano come from? It came from Girolamo Cardano. He was an Italian mathematician. Okay. What do you feed your dogs? The bones of my enemies. Charles, Vim versus NeoVim. I'm a Vim user. Sorry, guys. No Emacs for me. Although if I start doing some racket programming, you kind of have to live in the Emacs world because that's like where Lisp lives. Charles, do you keep in contact with Stormex crew at all? I read you were helping them a few years back. Yeah, I was an unpaid advisor years ago. I never took anything for it, and I like the kids there. And in particular, REU, she was there at the time, and she's a good friend, and she's very nice. But I haven't talked to them in years. Can smart contracts replace the role of lawyers? No. What they do is they give you a better way of debugging and testing legal arrangements and separating wet from dry code. I encourage you to read Nick Szabo's thoughts on the matter. King of the Rats meaning. That actually comes from Adam Back, called as King of the Rats. Ada, a queen, 300 AD-ish. Well, maybe, but it's actually Ada Lovelace is the name for Ada. She was a countess from the 19th century. How were your talks in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa? Are they willing to use Cardano for anything? Actually, I was going to meet with Cyril, and I was at his house up in down in Cape Town, and I spent time with his son, Tumelo Ramaphosa, but Cyril had a scheduling issue, so he couldn't make it to dinner. But we did have a great talk, Tumelo and I, and they were specifically about blockchain-based education in the Democratic Republic of Congo, so the DRC, and also in South Africa. So we're going to loop in what we're doing in Ghana into a more Pan-African setup and work with an educational venture in South Africa that also is sourcing in DRC. So that was the nature of that particular conversation. South Africa was more for larger companies there, like ShopRite and the exchanges and Opera and so forth. Why do you have a royal family photo on your Twitter profile? You know, I tell people this story from time to time, and as new people come in, they don't know it. So I'll tell it again real briefly. So there's this concept called the social sinkhole. And so if you look at sinkholes, they don't form from the top down. They form from the bottom up. And then what happens is as you're driving down the road, if you're unlucky, you fall into a sinkhole. Now, thousands of cars every day will be going across that sinkhole, not realizing they're driving over it. So everything from the outside looks totally normal. And until that one day when you're unlucky and you just happen to be heavy enough and it happened to be weak enough, and then boom, this big pit materializes. Societies are the same way. So for a long time, you think the government's okay, social structures are fine, institutions are running, everything is business as normal. Then suddenly it all falls apart. And you look back and say, how did this happen? How did we not notice that? So if you look at Europe in the 19th century, mostly led by kings, and that picture is a great example of that. That was the funeral of a British monarch who died right at the turn of the 19th to 20th century, I think around 1910. And all those people controlled like a quarter of the world's resources and had the largest militaries, were basically really powerful people. Within 10 years, at the end of World War One, those people, most of them had been depowered, some killed, some deplatformed. So in that picture, people look at that and they say, they control the world. That's that institution. But meanwhile, there's a social sinkhole that's happening and everything falls to hell. And then suddenly 10 years later, none of those people really have as much relevance as they used to. They're just gone. And that's the point of the picture, is how quickly things can change and how quickly society can change. And so we look at the dollar, it's absolutely supreme. And 40% of the dollars in circulation have been brought into circulation in the last 2 years. So we think the dollar is strong and powerful. The U.S. government is strong and powerful. They keep making decisions like this. That's accelerating the sinkhole. You keep driving down that road, but at some point something will happen, another 2008, and then boom, we all fall in it. And you can put that flag in the background too. They keep doing what they're doing. Mr. Hoskinson, I'm a German mathematician. Well, good to meet you, Hoss. And holder since 2018. I'm a fan of single Scotch malt whiskey. Please tell me about the taste of your 38-year-old whiskey. Greetings. It was a Gordon McFall that was a gift for the launch of Gogan. And it was really, really good. Although I still prefer a 21-year-old Hibiki. And what field of mathematics are you in, Peter? Are you working with the U.S. government? No, we currently do not have a relationship with the U.S. government, U.S. federal government. Hi, Charles. Staking seems too good to be true. Yeah, welcome to inflation. You're starting to get it. U.S. government does this. You see, it's inflation for the people, not inflation for the bankers. Why did Daniel Friedman move to Ergo? He didn't move to Ergo. He took an advisor role at Ergo, but he's still my employee. I should know because I cut the paychecks. uh, Looking good, Charles. Wow, thank you so much. Got to clean up the beard a little bit, but I feel good. I feel good. Yeah, we're getting there. Are you and Vitalik good friends? I wouldn't say that. I don't have any ill will or animosity. Crypto media seems to really love building up this competition. But to be honest, I don't think he thinks much about me or of me. And I tend not to think about him very much, although I do praise him from time to time. And it's one way in that respect. And crypto media has really made him a big guy, built him up, and rightfully so. Built a $500 billion ecosystem, and Ethereum has a great brand and a great ecosystem and so forth. Can extended UTXO live with the account model? They are isomorphic to each other, and they can definitely live together. We wrote a paper called Chimeric Ledgers that explains that. I think that they're complementary in a certain respect. What an odd question. Cat girl? Arsenal, Generation 4, PAB. What's your greatest fear? Come on now, give me something interesting. Are there any JavaScript libraries being developed in order to query the Cardano blockchain easily from the front end? Yeah, there's some work that's being done in that respect. And I remember Blockfrost, and there's about a dozen other things that are floating around. Some are in that area. Some are written in Rust because it's faster. But it's definitely something we're looking into. And I've been talking to the foundation about improving the JavaScript side of the world. And I recommended writing a bunch of infrastructure in TypeScript, something I think is important. There's always this Haskell to JS, JCJS, and Haskell to WebAssembly, and that's just not where we're not where we need to be with that. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. Have you watched the new Dune? No, I have not, and I want to. Trying to find that question. Oh, there was a good one that I wanted to bring up. Let's see here. RuneScape. That's an oldie but a goodie. Bison Hunt, Starlink, Local Bank, Ergodex. Wingsuit Tunnel. Come on, guys. Let's see here. Metaverse. Startup ideas. Transaction. Academic publishing. Nothing really sexy here. Husky Coin. Frank. Let's see here. Is ALN a good wallet? Best eating: chicken, pork, lamb, bison, beef, or deer? Well, I'm a bison rancher, sir, so obviously bison. Thoughts on Hosky coin? I don't know much about it. I hear they want to give me some, but I've talked to the team. I don't know anything about it. One of these days I'll pay attention to it. I just haven't had the time, and I've been pretty busy. But it's nice that the community's doing stuff. But again, I don't know anything about Hosky coin, and I'm glad that there's lots of things going on. Can you speak to the cult leader epithet that you've been given and how to manage the responsibility of your influence? Paul Halmo's method. Tell them what you're going to do it, and tell them what you did, and then you're done and move on. So focus on decentralization, focus on independence, focus on balance of power, and recognize wherever there's choke points or areas of centralization. Get rid of them. They say cult leader, I guess, because I'm charismatic. And the reality is that if you live in a world where Cardano's a scam, it's accomplished nothing, and Cardano has no value, you have to then explain why Cardano has value in a community. So the only explanation they can give is that I'm some sort of sociopathic, pathological, lying cult leader who's having everybody drink some sort of digital Kool-Aid for this. Now, look at where the real value comes from: the code, the community, the projects, the papers. That's like the endeavors of thousands of hardworking people, now 2 million in the ecosystem over a 6-year period. But apparently, the critics want to live in this weird reality where a contradiction is true. I'm incompetent, have no technical skills, can't do anything, and I'm not even that smart, not even an academic, according to Molten Tar Monster, all these things. And yet at the same time, I'm hyper charismatic and can mislead the world's top experts to put their brand and reputation and time, their precious time for the last 6 years, into something that doesn't exist. So I'm hyper competent and hyper incompetent, and therefore cult leader. It would be offensive if it wasn't so laughable, if it wasn't so crazy, and just so out there. We built this whole movement on inclusive accountability, your ability to verify truth yourself. Don't trust us, trust the process and the system. Peer review, for example. I tell you who's a cult leader: anybody who says, buy now, and if you don't buy now, you're going to lose out. I'll tell you who's a cult leader: anybody who says, just trust me, we have the most brilliant people. Don't read the papers. Don't have any verification. We don't even need to show you our code. We don't need to show you anything. But just trust us. It's all going to work out. I'll tell you the cult leader: people say we should stay in power forever, and there should be no system in place to create decentralization and community level control. We don't need independent funding sources for the progress of the system. Just trust our foundation and we'll be here forever. That's cult. It's pretty culty. Or people who say there can never be any innovation. Only our protocol is the path to truth. Everything else is a scam and bad. Apparently the people who say think for yourself, keep an open mind, learn critical thinking skills, those are the bad people, according to the people who have this epithet. So, it is what it is. I'm just a guy. I build stuff. I love my company. I love the people I work with. And we tell everybody what we're going to do. We do it. That's what we're doing right now. And after it's done, we'll write a book about it and say what we did. And if it works, it'll have hundreds of millions of users and it'll speak for itself. And I'll never get an apology because it's just who these people are.